For the last year or so, I've been trying to maintain a very positive outlook on my channel. Personal events in life associated with stress and depression reinforced the old adage life is too short, and I wanted to extend that to my hobbies and generally try to find the good in things to promote rather than dwell on the bad. Admittedly, this has come to me forcing myself to say good things about bad games and movies, but recommending a game that about a week later I grew to find intolerable is small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. I say that so you'll understand just how infuriating I found the subject of this video. Now, I am largely unfamiliar with CBR. The only thing I really knew about them prior to this was their constant top 10 clickbait lists. Amusingly enough, anytime they spoke on Yu-Gi-Oh! It only went to show how little their writers knew about the game. But anyway, this article I found on Reddit about how Record of Ragnarok is sexist is almost certainly clickbait, so if you'd like to read it for yourself, I have an archived link below so these morons don't get a penny more than they deserve. I'll be going through this bit by bit so I can go into careful detail of this article.
I mean, he's an ass. And he's dumb. He's a dumbass.
It's safe to say there's a strong degree of sexism embedded in the 12 episodes that comprise Netflix's Record of Ragnarok. It's male-dominated, especially on the fighting side, with women who hold major roles being relegated in the tournament between gods and humans to organizers and enablers, as per Brunhilde's Valkyrie squad. The later leader is the one who gets Zeus and his council to agree to the death matches that pit mystically powered humans from various eras in history against deities, with her job now being to spectate as her sisters then become literal objects the warriors use as weapons. I don't know why I use that accent. I'm pretty sure the writer doesn't sound like that. But there's a trope for that. But anyway, that's the whole point. The gods want to wipe out humanity who have no way of fighting back save for the Valkyries. Brunhilde decides, again, in order to save humanity, to come up with a strategy and roster for this tournament. She is the leader, the general, the shot caller, the coach. She is deliberately pitting certain humans against certain gods. For example, Rangritz's power was to break through armor and defenses. Brunhilde had her and Lu Bu go up against Thor under the mistaken belief that if Lu Bu uses Rangritz to destroy Thor's gloves, Thor wouldn't be able to wield Mjolnir. This backfires, however, and the strategy ends up helping Thor. In the following fight, Brunhilde sends out Adam as her next champion in the hopes of guaranteeing a win against Shiva and boosting humanity's morale. Unfortunately, again, things don't go her way, and Zeus hijacks the second match and kills Adam, but not before Adam shows the gods can bleed, so to speak. The only time in the Netflix anime one could possibly argue Brunhilde only being a spectator is the fight between Kojiro and Poseidon, as Kojiro volunteers himself. Unfortunately, this sexism is made even worse by who Brunhilde chooses next to defend mankind, as Season 1 ends by setting up the next big fight. This incoming fighter is none other than Jack the Ripper, the infamous serial killer from the 1800s, who's going to be the slasher extraordinaire against Hercules in Record of Ragnarok Season 2. It's hard to understand why Brunhilde is celebrating him as a liberator, given his toxic past murdering women in England, while many properties similarly treat him as a novelty item and non-offensive celebrity, most recently the anime series Moriarty the Patriot. Ragnarok's lack of women in action makes its propping up of a misogynistic killer like him leave a bitter taste. So I'm going to assume that you, writer of this article, have never bothered to read the source material. But you know what? Hey, fine. I don't want to start sounding like one of those Star Wars fans telling everyone to go read the novels because George Lucas didn't explain something in the movie. But even what little we got from the post-credits teaser, at what part is Brunhilde celebrating Jack? At best, you could argue Heimdall, the color commentator of the tournament, is hyping him up. And even then, the humans in the audience are both flabbergasted and appalled. And given the real-life history on Jack the Ripper, is this not intriguing? Does this not make an audience member say, I wonder what's going to happen next? How is a Victorian-era serial killer going to fight against one of the most accomplished Greek heroes? Now, going into the source material, which would take you, writer of this article, about 3 minutes to Google search and find for yourself. In fact, hey, I'll link the beginning of the fight in the description below so you can read it from there. Because research is hard. Brunhilde makes it abundantly clear that she chooses Jack to fight Hercules as a deliberate counterpick, much like she tried to do with Lu Bu, except this time it worked. Hercules in Record of Ragnarok is a straight-laced Boy Scout who plays by rules and honor and also happens to be one of the strongest gods, so she chooses the antithesis, both in personality and in methodology, because she knew Hercules would be too honest and eventually fall for Jack's deceptions.
Blah, blah, blah. I don't need to hear all about these things that you're saying.
Hear what? Strategy?
Whatever that means.
Brunhilde, meanwhile, isn't as feminist as she could be, with her Valkyries just being reduced to mere tools without a real say.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
So far in the Netflix adaptation, we've met 3 Valkyries who have been in the fights, and all 3 have voluntarily agreed to lend their abilities to the humans. They agree with Brunhilde's goal of saving humanity and volunteer themselves wherever they are needed in Brunhilde's plan, fully understanding the risks involved. So far in the source material, the only Valkyrie to object to anything was Hlok, if I pronounced that correctly, who is down with saving humanity but did not want to be Jack's Volunder specifically. The ensuing scene where Jack mimics strangling Hlok to death with her feelings of betrayal go to establish how far Brunhilde is willing to go to save humanity. We call that character development. This could have easily been course-corrected with a deviation from the source material to include more women in battle. On the goddesses' side, Kali the Hindu destroyer comes to mind. There's also Sif or Hera from Norse and Greek mythology respectively. On the human side, Jack could have been swapped out for Joan of Arc, Mulan, that Celtic badass known as Boudica, or even a black Amazon.
How about no?
The writer of Record of Ragnarok chose those specific figures from history and mythology for a reason. And even if it's a petty reason, like he had a cool idea for a hat for a particular character, those decisions are the writer's to make. This suggestion that you, writer of this article, are making is part of the reason the Japanese comic book industry is thoroughly butt-fucking the American comic book industry with extra tentacles on the side. You are listing no greater reason to sub out male characters for female characters other than representation. Well, you and your ilk need to understand the world isn't a liberal arts college campus that revolves around your wants and desires. The writer of Ragnarok had an idea, put it on paper with help from another artist, pitched it to a publisher who picked it up, after which it found a wide enough audience to deserve an animated adaptation. If you don't like it, don't watch it. This would have helped the inclusivity of the show. Instead, it wastes the opportunity for someone like Jack, who's definitely not a hero. He's the antithesis to all that. A predator who preyed on innocent women, not someone of honor per Kojiro, Adam, or the other soldiers Brunhilde has on her roster. Again, if you actually waited for the next season to come out instead of hastily making judgments, you'd find you're making almost the exact same points against fighting Jack that Hercules is making. Hercules wanted to fight against a man of honor and renown, but got stuck with Jack. As the fight goes on, though, we learn a lot about this version of Jack the Ripper, and Hercules comes to feel sorry for him and desires to see him freed from his inner misery. Again, character development. Then there's the fact that Aphrodite is just used as eye candy. Even for an anime, her bust is very exaggerated. Just for you, the remainder of this video's background shots will be Aphrodite images. Not even limited to Ragnarok either, just whatever shameless stuff I can find. Goal being used to critique Brunhilde's choices makes it even worse, while Zeus ogling and making derogatory comments doesn't help the cause either. Any way you slice it, despite being fairly prominent in Ragnarok, Jack's inclusion only adds insult to injury. The female characters simply don't have active roles that matter in the show, merely being used as a set decoration or deployed as objects of lust or violence. How does Goal critiquing Brunhilde make things worse? If anything, I'd argue it makes things better as we have a side character challenging the actions and decisions made by the main character. And no one but you Karens cares about Zeus being a dirty old man, which is another very common trope in Japanese media. With regards to Jack's role versus female roles in the show, let me again remind you that a woman is the main protagonist of the show, leading the salvation of humanity. I would also note that while we do in the show so far have all the Valkyries used in Volunder confirming they want to follow Brunhilde's lead, we do not have the same affirmations for the male combatants. Brunhilde selected them ahead of time, and we are never given much indication that the men had any say in this. Did Brunhilde approach them individually and ask if they'd like to fight for humanity, or did she just put them on a list and tell them to deal with it?
The closest we have so far to indicating a willing participant is in Adam's speech, but Lubu and Kojiro never make any such indication that they even wanted to participate in the fights to begin with. And no, Kojiro volunteering to get his turn underway before Brunhilde might have wanted to use him is not indicative of him being offered the position on the team in the first place and saying he's in. If anything, I'd argue the human fighters are more of objects being used by the Valkyries than the other way around.
Had they been given more agency or used more in combat, then we could understand, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? I think you get it. It's just a closing statement reiterating the point of the article I feel I've already addressed. Anyway, I think all has been said that needs to be said about this article, so that'll be it from me. Now y'all go out there and treat each other like you have some sense.